And the situation in the Northwest is that we know that domestic violence is happening right across our area, and we really want your listeners to know that DVAS, the local dedicated domestic violence service, is available. We're available for women who are experiencing domestic violence, and we provide a completely confidential support, information and advocacy service. But we also want your listeners to know that we can provide confidential information to family members, friends, colleagues, neighbours who might be worried about somebody's situation and not know how to help them. So we want to really encourage people to get good information from us as to how you can support and help somebody.
And with the current situation that we see, I think people are concerned that perhaps is domestic abuse becoming more common, but I think the real distinction that needs to be made is perhaps it's just more awareness. Is that the situation?
Well, that's a very, very good point to make, David. Yes, we will never know how prevalent domestic violence is, because obviously it's something that happens in the privacy of people's homes. And in our homes, most of us want to feel safe and loved and cared for and happy and joyful. But unfortunately, domestic violence creates a situation where women and children are living without choices, being coerced, being controlled, and without fear. So, yes, we understand that statistics tell us that it could be anything from 1 in 5 to 1 in 4 to perhaps even 1 in 3 people experience this horrible abuse in their intimate relationships. But we also really want people to know that support is available and that you're not alone and that you can access good confidential information and support from DVAS.
I think as well, what else is coming to the public knowledge is that perhaps people initially think of domestic abuse, perhaps they think of physical abuse, but the truth is it can take many different forms, can't it?
That's absolutely right. And in fact, some of your listeners probably already know that in January 2019, a new Domestic Violence Act came into law in Ireland, and it made a criminal offence of something we now know as coercive control. And coercive control can exist where no physical abuse has happened at all, but people's lives are really restricted and limited in many ways by the abusive, controlling behaviour of somebody.
If you look at the programme for government, there's a lot of aspirations, but particularly things that we would like to highlight would be bed capacity and consultants. But then you look at the HSE service plan for 2025, and you see that there's going to be no extra staff. There is an employment ceiling, which is the same as an embargo on staff. So that's one. Look, with the programme for government talks about 4,000 new beds. Many new beds are planned for 2025, 300. So I think it's all well and good having aspirations, but as it falls back to this argument we'd have is we need to have a 4 to 5 year health budget to allow people to see where everything is going to come. We are very concerned that we don't have enough hospital beds. Patients are noticing that both in emergency departments in the hospitals and in general practice. And really, until we, do have a concrete plan rather than a wish, we're really just standing still. And I think the HSE service plan just shows that we're just standing still.
And I guess, Doctor, it sounds like you kind of just want a more long-term, clear roadmap almost for the sector going forward, because it's almost, in a way, could it be considered almost a hand-to-mouth kind of way of these? You're highlighting these problems as they're coming, and they're almost being dealt with on a day-to-day basis, even when services are struggling to match up to the demand. And you're kind of just wanting more sustainability for the whole industry, and just by having a clear plan going forward.
Exactly. Thank you, David. If you would just write that down and just send it to me, I can use that as a statement going forward. That's exactly what I mean. And essentially, the way I would look upon it is if you're a consultant now, a newly qualified consultant, and you're looking at a Tier 3 hospital, which would be Sligo and Letterkenny, you would sort of say, what is the plan for this hospital going forward in the next decade? Will I go there? And at the present minute, I won't, because both the Tier 3 hospitals are carrying a lot of the work. They're carrying over 60% of the acute admissions all over Ireland. They're doing it with a much smaller staff. and an awful lot of that staff are not on training schemes. So it would be completely unattractive for a young consultant to say, I think I would like to locate to Sligo, I think I would like to locate to Letterkenny.
I think the most important thing that we are saying is that in communities where resources are non-existent or are stretched to breaking point, or in areas of very little of poverty, it is not wise, nor is it fair, to introduce new cohorts of very vulnerable people who need support. So to us, this is just a statement of common sense. It's a matter of common sense that where you're making provision for international protection, that it's in areas that have the resources and the capacity to support that. I just think that's a no-brainer. In areas where you are going to locate centres, you still, of course, have to have the conversation with the local community. That's just a matter of creating good community relationships and a sense of understanding across the community. One of the things that we absolutely want to see happen is a move away from provision of accommodation in the private sector, where decisions are simply made on the basis of who has a hotel, who has a factory, OK, let's go there. That's a crazy way to go about it. The state needs to provide this accommodation. It needs to be planned. And of course then the system around immigration needs to be tightened up. It needs just to work more efficiently. Just remember, a lot of the applications, 2/3 in fact, that are made aren't successful. So we have an obligation to those who do need international protection and who qualify to stay here in Ireland, to integrate them, that they become part and parcel of Irish life and Irish society, and those that don't, that they make a safe return to their home country. But if you don't have an efficient system, nobody wins. And that feeds frustration and worry and anxiety and all of this. So I'm absolutely confident a government that adopts the right, efficient approach respectfully. A lot of the angst and the division that there's been on this issue, that we can actually heal that, because fundamentally people in the West, in the Northwest, across Ireland, fundamentally we remain a very decent, compassionate, fair and a very, very welcoming community. But government made a botch of this issue. So the next government can't continue in that vein. There has to be a step change. And that's what we're proposing.
For those of us who grew up in the 80s and 90s, we know the impact the Troubles had on border counties, and Sligo is amongst them. And the fact that we can continue this investment in programmes shows it's an investment in peace. So I want to thank everybody involved, everybody in the Sligo Peace Plus Partnership, everybody in Sligo County Council, to our MEPs who are very involved in getting this funding. And I think the plan that we're launching today, and that is going to be launched, is really interesting. It's community focused. And as I said, I'm particularly delighted that Helpswell are involved in it, because culture is so important to the rest of Ireland and to Sligo.
And Minister, just as you alluded to there in terms of the Troubles and how long they were ago now, that there have been a generation growing up that have no memory of it whatsoever. And when we think about all the war across the world right now at the moment, and it feels a complicated minute in the world's history. So I guess days like this, it's not just about everyone coming together, but it's more about what it symbolises, I guess, that in a very fractured world of what we're seeing, this is very much a message about peace and togetherness.
Absolutely. I think, there were times when you grew up in Ireland in the 80s and in the 90s, you thought our troubles in the north were intractable, and they were resolved by dialogue and resolved by diplomacy and by people, by communities coming together, insisting and demanding peace. And that was the genesis of the Good Friday Agreement. And we hope that we can bring that peace to the people of Gaza, the people of Ukraine, to the people of all of the trouble spots at the moment. And today is a celebration of peace, but it is also, we cannot take it for granted. We cannot take it for granted. And it is a very, very fragile world, and we're seeing it breaking in many parts. Our peace process is still relatively young, and we have to continue to invest in it, not just with money, but with confidence building, with communities, and investing in communities so that we don't go back to those dark days.